When Grounded 1 was in early access and when I was a much smaller channel, I made a single video about it. It's deleted now, but it was a video of me asking the developers to make spear throwing a more viable playstyle. I've got a real fixation with throwing spears when it comes to first-person games. There's something about hitting something that's moving with a spear that itself moves at a parabolic arc. It excites the blood memory of my Neolithic ancestors. And in video games, I particularly like it when you can use throwing spears to both fight and also have the general utility of using it to hunt. And Grounded does this really well, maybe the best I've seen in any game. I really enjoy forgoing the bow entirely and using my spear to kill an aphid as we just notice each other, or trap it atop a leaf and use the spear to bring it down. So in my video in Grounded's early access, I pointed out two problems with it. Number one, that the Javelineer perk, despite the fact that it's called Javelineer, didn't do anything to affect your spear throwing. In fact, nothing seemed to affect your spear throwing, which was the other problem I pointed out. Using a higher tier spear did not affect the damage that your throw did. Throwing the highest tier spear would do the same damage as throwing just a normal pebblet spear. And even upgrading weapons didn't have any effect on the damage your spear throws did. It was completely static. And I pointed out that that was weird because it seemed like spear throwing was an intended, and in fact encouraged, mechanic. Spears as a passive effect did more throwing damage than other weapons. That fact is listed on the spear description. And the mutation associated with spears, Javelineer, suggests that as well. A javelin is a type of spear used for throwing. Now luckily when the game left early access, all of my concerns were addressed. And spears are really good now. They're extremely effective, especially at the beginning of the game. But there's still room for improvement. They did everything I asked, but now I want more. The problem with the spears is that they feel janky to use. The playstyle of throwing the spear almost feels unintended with how many barriers there are for you to use it. For example, spears don't stack. Because they're a melee weapon, they take up a whole slot in your inventory. But when you're using the weapon to throw in combat, you need more than one. Probably at least 5. Which means that if you're trying to use a dedicated spear throwing build, you'd be wasting around 5 to 7 item slots just carrying all the spears that you're going to need. And this becomes a much worse problem when you start getting higher tier weapons, and when you start upgrading those weapons. It takes a lot of resources to fully upgrade a weapon. When you throw a spear, if you have other spears of the same type, another one will be equipped right away, but only if that spear is equipped in the exact same way and to the exact same level. So spear throwing as a build requires huge amounts of resources. And even worse, spears are janky and often get lost. Either lost in the heat of combat because you throw them and then you can't find them, or they'll get trapped under the map or under a rock that can't be broken. This happens very often. And it works fine when you're in the early game where spears are very strong, so you're getting all the benefits of spear throwing, but they're also easily craftable. You haven't invested any upgrade materials into them, so losing them is not a serious blow. But when you lose a tier 3 fully upgraded rusty spear because it decided to clip into a rock, that's a serious problem. Enough of a problem that you might want to go to your previous save file to get it back. But that's not a solution, because who knows when your last save file was. It could be a huge amount of time that you're wasting on it. More importantly, Grounded is a co-op game. And if you're playing in a world with other people, they're not going to be happy if you need to reload the save file every time you lose a spear. Especially if you're losing significant progress every time it happens. In fact, when I'm playing with a group, I don't like reloading save files for basically any reason. And most of the people I play with would agree they would object to save scumming to get my spears back. So, spear throwing is very fun and it's extremely strong, but it's unpolished, and polish is what it needs. It needs to feel better to play this way, and I would even sacrifice a lot of its strength if I could have more polish. I'd be happy to give up damage if I could get the experience to feel smoother. I was lucky to have all of my suggestions applied in Grounded 1.0, so I'm hoping that I'll get lucky again and present my suggestions to how spears should work in Grounded 2. First of all, the most important thing, and the easiest to apply, is we need to change the way the spear trajectory works. The spear throw changes depending on whether you're standing still or moving. If you're moving, the trajectory will be higher. And I think it's done this way to simulate the added force that you would generate by moving forward while throwing. And I agree with that in principle. The spear throw should be different depending on whether you're moving forward or standing still. My problem with it is that moving forward shouldn't make the spear go somewhere you're not aiming. Let me show you in a diagram. Let's say that you are here and you're trying to throw the spear in this direction. When you're standing still, the trajectory of the spear will be like this. But if you're moving forward, the trajectory will be like this. The spear is thrown higher, probably so that it goes further. The issue is, that's not where I aimed the spear. Instead of that, I think that when you're moving forward and throwing the spear, it should change to this. The spear is still going in the direction that I'm pointing at, and it's going forward in the same way, but because I'm throwing it while moving, it goes further and gets there faster. This is more realistic, and it would help immensely with the weapon's feel. In Grounded, there will be enemy types that run away after taking a certain amount of damage. This change will make it a lot easier to hit these moving targets from further away, without having to adjust to the strange and arbitrary way that the spear throw works when you're moving forward. If no other change is done to spear throwing and they only did this, well, that wouldn't be ideal, but I would take it. Another easy change to make is to have spears be picked up automatically the way that you can arrows. If you just walk over an arrow or walk nearby it, it will be put into your inventory, and I think the same thing should happen to spears. When you're fighting an enemy with a spear, you'll throw several at them, and they'll stick to the bugs for a short time. This lets you grab the spear from the still moving enemy during combat, so that you can throw them again. Instead, I think that the spear should go back to your inventory as soon as you simply approach them, instead of having to spam the interact button during combat. This is the kind of thing that I'm talking about when I say that the spear throwing feels clunky. There's so many uncomfortable barriers to using spear throwing in normal combat that I feel like I'm getting mixed signals. It'd be one thing if spear throwing was a weird and unintended way of playing, but look at the Javelinier perk in Grounded 2. It depicts a guy in the process of throwing a spear. The last of the easy-to-implement changes they could do for Grounded 2 is to let me toggle the location of my spears after I throw them on the actual map. That way, if I throw a high-tier, highly upgraded piece of equipment at a bug, especially a wasp or something, and then I miss, causing the spear to land really far away from where the fight is happening, I can check my map for its location instead of just having lost a very valuable piece of equipment. Alright, finally let's talk about potential ways they can implement spear stacking. Everything I mentioned up until now I think would make a world of difference, but it's still minor quality of life changes that would keep spears working exactly how they work now. But stacking spears onto a single equipment item slot is a more drastic change. You could just do it, and then everything would work normally. The spears could stack up to 3 or 5 or 7 or 10. Maybe they could start with 3 and you can upgrade how many they get to. You would still be stuck with only being able to stack like for like. So spears would only stack with other spears that are at a equal upgrade level. If they did just that, then that's acceptable. I can live with it. It would still be a huge resource drain to upgrade several different spears, but it would be minimally invasive to their overall design and would ultimately be fine. What I would like, though, is the introduction of a javelin quiver. The quiver could hold up to 3 javelins, and maybe as you get a higher tier quiver, it would hold more and more javelins. The unique thing about it would be that the quiver is the weapon that you upgrade, not the individual javelins, which would differentiate them from existing spears. These javelins would do less damage than spears in melee combat, and wouldn't do any more damage when you throw them. This way they're not overpowered, it just makes the spear throwing playstyle more convenient. It would function the way bows and arrows function in Grounded 1. Bows aren't the thing that hit the enemy, but it's still the thing that you upgrade with materials to increase its damage. Similarly, the quiver would be the weapon. You spend your upgrade materials on it to increase damage, and the javelins themselves are like arrows. In this way, if they get lost either through your own negligence or the game glitching one under the map, it's not quite so devastating a loss. Anyway, let me know what you think. Those are my ideas of how spears should be improved in Grounded 2. If you have your own improvements or changes you'd like, say so in the comments. That's the end of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching.